Canberra Cannons who were fighting with you for that last spot.
Yeah, I mean, it was a must couple of wins for us, you know. We sort of left it a bit late to make our surge for the playoffs and that, so it was, yeah, just 100% effort from all the guys, and it was good.
Well, certainly it was an important weekend for your team, but more importantly for both JoJo English and yourself. Both of you had a huge weekend.
Yeah, it was good. Like, JoJo was shooting great. He's playing well, driving well, and, you know, I managed to step up a bit myself, so, yeah, I've been really happy with this weekend. Well,
29 points, 9 rebounds. That'd be probably one of your best games ever?
I think it is. Definitely, yeah, my best one. So.
And now, do you think that Coach Dunlop will continue with the experiment of starting you and bringing Blakemore off the bench?
Not sure. As long as I keep performing, I guess I've got a good chance, you know, good shot of that. So just keep playing hard and see what happens.
Well, a lot of the punters at the beginning of the season picked you guys to win it all.
Yeah.
It seems like you're finding your form at the right time of the season.
Yeah, we left it a little late, but we'll take it now, that's for sure.
Well, good luck with the rest of the season, Brett.
Thanks, mate.
And let's have a look at the match statistics and this dominating win by the Adelaide 36ers. 122 to 104, and that sums it all up. The field shots, Cannons did shoot fairly well at 48%. 36ers down on 46, but it didn't really matter. They got 122 points. The free throw fairly accurate, and the 3 points about the same. The rebounds, it was the 36ers, but the turnovers, the big statistic that went against the Cannons, 21 turnovers to just 9 from the 36ers. Let's have a look at the top scorers for the Cannons. Close, Borner, Scales and Cofield and Dwight. And the 36ers, Wheeler, 29. What a performance from young Brett Wheeler. A super game. Congratulations to him, Rose, English, Marr and Blakemore. Well, the 36ers certainly give themselves a big chance of making the playoffs. For the Cannons, they're in deep trouble. Hope you enjoyed the game. Stay with us after the break for more Sunday afternoon basketball.
Yeah.
And welcome back to Sunday Basketball. We've got more, including Steve Carfino's chat with Brian Goorjian about building a roster. Reggie Smith will be right here in our studio to discuss the Falcons' strong championship claims and more. But for now, we're going to go to the game.
Uncle Toby's proudly presents highlights from the games of the week.
The 36ers have perhaps the toughest run to the playoffs, but they had the look of a team that could do it when they beat the Giants at the Glasshouse Friday night. Last night, they faced an equally desperate Canberra at the Palace.
The two sides fighting for 8th position came to the Palace. The Canberra Cannons matching up with the Adelaide 36ers. Adelaide were riding high after beating the defending premiers, the Giants, the night before. Looking to make it a winning double, they started strongly and led out 31-27 at quarter time in a high-scoring game.
Great pass.
Wheeler.
What a pass and dunk from Brett Wheeler.
Almost a turnover. He goes out to Dwight. He's open. He hits the three. And Brett Wheeler was the standout on the court, playing the game of his life. In the first half, he dominated as the game-high scorer with 18, alongside NBL veteran Robert Rose. The Cannons staked their claim with a second-quarter surge that gave them a 6-point lead at half-time. Perlman runs into Davis. That's a nice pass to Scale.
Pure Milk 36 with an opportunity to take the lead. To that man there, and he scores again, 26.
The 36ers recovered their composure and had the Cannons reeling as they broke away to a big lead. The fight back never came from Canberra as they struggled to match the intensity and enthusiasm of the 36ers. 36ers looking to bury the Cannons and Ninnis. This is ridiculous. You have to go out at him.
And then once again, he's done it again, straight through the middle.
At the siren, it was Adelaide victors, 122 to 104.
Well, problems for the Cannons after a wonderful start to the year. They've now lost 4 in a row. Brett Wheeler had a new career high of 29 points, a fine way to celebrate his 100th NBL game. Well, in his series on the road to NBL success, Steve Carfino has talked to Sydney about junior development. Well, now it's Southeast Melbourne with arguably the most promising group of junior players in the league.
If you're 16 or 17 years old and one of the best juniors in Australia, playing for the Southeast Melbourne Magic has to be your first consideration. The Magic program is the best springboard for an NBL career.
I think, 8 years ago when I started, the club originated with a youth policy, and in our area, the area that we draw from, has produced a lot of good players, obviously, and it kind of all happened this year that we got all of them in and all of them ready to play. So this year's team, I think, shows the youth movement more than any team that's been in the NBL to date. I think Melbourne and Lindsay Gaze, I think, has got to get the pat on the back for starting this thing. I mean, with the building of the new stadiums, getting the councils behind basketball in each area, and we've got a lot of new stadiums, a lot of young kids playing basketball at an early age and getting involved in competitions. And when they become good, they end up on the state teams. And then the state teams, you go to the under 18s, you go to the under 20s, and it's easier for us to recruit because most of the kids come from our area, which is obviously that, Melbourne, eastern suburbs, northern suburbs, what have you. And, you spot those kids, you target the ones that are right for your program, and you go after them.
The number of players that have come through this program as teenagers and developed, myself, Sam McKinnon, Rupert, Parky wasn't a teenager when he came here, but he's definitely developed. So I think that it's definitely the place to be. You get an opportunity to play, and Brian's probably the best coach in Australia at developing young talent, I think.
The common denominator that we have is all our young kids are athletic, and I think that's going to be new in this league, is it's going to become an athletic league, and it's going to become a league that involves strength. And the young kids, the Sam McKinnon, the Chris Anstey, the Jason Smith, the Tony Ronaldson are all fairly athletic and all fairly, strong. And the most fulfilling thing as a coach, I think even more so than winning, is seeing a Tony Ronaldson or a Sam McKinnon or a Chris Anstey develop into a player. And most of the time when they develop into a good player, you look at somebody like Andrew Gaze or Wahov or these great ones, they develop as men. It's not only as a basketball player, it's as a human being. I mean, Andrew Gaze, when he was 12 years old, not only has he developed into a great basketball player, he's developed into a great human being. And that usually goes hand in hand.
But the thing is that as the new talent's coming in, the older guys aren't getting any worse. You've got guys like John Dortch who's having a great year, so that makes it even harder for someone like Anstey to break in. So it's just going to get tougher and tougher.
Well, it's always one of the season's great matches, no matter where they're placed, and they're always well placed anyway. Southeast Melbourne had the chance to once again challenge for the championship lead when they tackled the Tigers at Flinders Park. Melbourne was returning from a successful road trip to Hobart the night before, but they needed to win this one as well.
The biggest crowd of the year packed into Flinders Park for the crosstown rivals clash. They didn't have to wait long for the highlight show to commence. Alley-oop! Turnovers were common for both teams, but it was the Magic who made the most of the situation. Jordan, you forced to really shoot that ball high in the air. On the quarter-time buzzer, they were up by 8 and pumped. Lob pass, Anstey! Yes! Great play by the Magic! Look. The Tigers clawed their way back and pounced on everything to tie it up halfway through the second quarter. Wins it back beautifully, Gaze had 19 in the half, while McKinnon gave the sellout crowd one of the greatest alley-oops of the year. Alley-oop pass to McKinnon! Oh, great! That was spectacular for Ronaldson. Slam Sam was the Magic's leading scorer with 14 spectacular points to give his side a 7-point buffer at the main break. Early in the third, the buffer stretched to 14. McKinnon had a hand in everything, and Jordan stepped up from outside. Good play. Jordan for 3. Ouch! As expected, though, Melbourne bounced back, led by captain Andrew Gaze. Screen set by Giddy allows Gaze to go free. Classic basketball. He had support from Copeland, who chipped in with an 11-point term, but they still trailed by double figures at the last change. 3-on-1 here. Oh, that is magnificent. With 4 minutes to play, the Tigers had got to within 6 points. Gaze, the money man. Gaze. Fill it up. Fill that. that thing up, says Gay. They had their chances, but the Magic proved too big and quick for the Tigers. Southeast Melbourne Magic home by 6. And that is the contest.
Sam McKinnon, he gets better all the time. 9 of 10 from the field. He took 9 boards. Adonis Jordan had 12 assists and hit 4 of 5 trays. The Tigers actually out-rebounded the Magic 42-36 and clearly outshot them from the foul line, but 23 turnovers did hurt them. Well, another war of desperation at the arena. Geelong hosted the Kings, hoping to stay in the hunt for a playoff spot and make even the most optimistic Sydney fans forget the rest of the season. The first quarter was full of Sydney surges in spite of Geelong's outside threat. Graham keeps them in touch. The Kings were winning the war inside. Trimmingham got 2 points there and was asking for a foul. Jeff Arnold, well, he was a little outnumbered there. Bolden putting the D on him. He misses the shot. Keogh gets the rebound, has a look, no options, so he just runs it up and pulls up one of those trademark three-pointers. This is one of Geelong's 29 three-point attempts. They tried to keep in touch from the outside. In this case, Cass does, and they're pretty close. But Sydney got away to a 12-point lead after the first quarter. Trimmingham gets 2 and actually drew a foul on that play. Second quarter, it evened up. The Cats reeled the Kings in to trail by 8 points. Third quarter, as these teams began to think about the consequences, it was tough. Keogh hits 3. Joey Wright lifts his team. They actually outscored the Kings to snatch the lead going into the final quarter. Trimmingham was the difference, scoring some tough baskets and rebounding as well. Justin Cass, again, keeps his team in touch with a perimeter score. Hubbard replies at the other end. In fact, he and Keogh had a nice little barrage at one stage, which set up a 96-91 lead. It looked like the winning score, but the Cats would not surrender. Arnold gets the dunk on transition. In the last few minutes, they closed it up, but it was just too late. Not even the last score of the game was enough to reel in the Kings. Well, 6 of the last 7 matches between these two sides have been decided by 5 points or less. Damien Keogh, his 400th game, and he celebrated with 17 points, 9 assists, and most importantly for the Kings, a win. Other highlights were Trimmingham's 16 boards and 5 blocks, and David Graham tried his heart out for the Cats with 5 of 9 from the perimeter. Still ahead, more highlights. We've got Reggie Smith coming in, and this.
Hey, which way to? Come on over to my place. We got too much to do, you know, time is a short space.
The 1995 Mitsubishi Challenge continues when Sega presents the Pride of Sydney. The Sydney Coca-Cola Kings clash with the Illawarra Hawks Saturday the 19th of August at the Sydney Entertainment Center. Tip-off at 7:30. Bolden and Trimmingham up against LaFleur and Thomas. Explosive jam in action. Kings versus Hawks. Tickets at Ticketek, so buy your tickets now.
You got a smile so bright. You know you could have been a candle. I'm holding you so tight. You know you could have been a handle. The way you swept me off my feet. You know you could have been a broom. Well, you could have been anything that you wanted to. And I can tell the way you do the things you do. The way you do. Oh, baby.
Well, Brisbane became another snakebite victim on Friday night, and there's no worse place to recover from that than Newcastle. The Falcons lost to the Bullets at Boondall earlier in the season, but now the Steel City has its sights on a top 4 spot, perhaps even the league lead. Look out.
The Falcons have been one of the real surprise packets of this year's Mitsubishi Challenge, and they were looking for their 5th straight victory at home.
Butch Hayes slides by and down.
The game opened up in spectacular fashion as long bombs were landed by first Shane Heel.
Here's the hammer. First up.
Then Butch Hayes.
Butch Hayes is open, and he hits the 3.
And Michael Johnson.
Mike Johnson from outside the arc. He's good.
But it was the Bullets who were able to sustain the momentum with some full-court pressure ruffling the Falcons' feathers.
And they force a poor pass. Buckle up for Mike Mitchell. Get around, Lee. Butch Hayes outside, and again,
cross-court again.
Great defence forces the bad pass. Shane Heal all the way for 2.
The Bullets went to half-time leading 57-41 with the Falcons clearly on the back foot.
A second left on the clock. Leroy Loggins puts up the shot. It doesn't go. It's 58-41. Half-time here at the Newcastle Entertainment Centre.
Towering Falcon centre Reggie Smith was kept scoreless in the second quarter, but showed some deft touch in a spirited attempt to get the Falcons flying again.
Left-hand hooky goes down and counts. Sensational basket for Reggie Smith.
Leroy Loggins gave the Falcons the runaround for 31 points, and Shane Heal was also effective.
Here's the hammer fadeaway. Oh!
That shot gave the Bullets an 87-68 lead coming into the final term. The Falcons, who'd been effectively grounded all night, threatened the Bullets with a determined start to the fourth quarter. A spectacular three-pointer from Mike Johnson started a roll, which cut the deficit from 22 back to 11. Reggie Smith getting involved heavily.
Reggie Smith almost hurts himself as he goes down.
But in the end, it was Shane Heal who gave the crowd and the Falcons nightmares. The Brisbane Bullets home 113, Newcastle 93, and for Brisbane coach Bruce Palmer, it was his 4th straight 20-point win at the Newcastle Entertainment Centre.
Well, overall, it was their 5th win in Newcastle. Brisbane took 40 free throws to Newcastle's 19. That helped. And they made 80%. The Falcons made only 53% of their share. Leroy Loggins shot at 55%. He took 10 rebounds and had 2 blocks in his MVP performance. Well, the Falcons have performed well for very many reasons this season, not the least of which is, of course, their ace in the hole, Reggie Smith. He's dominated most of the big men in the Mitsubishi Challenge, and we're pretty happy to have him with us here in the studio right now. Reggie, welcome.
Nice to be here.
Well, first of all, how would you sum up your season in the NBL?
It's going good so far. I think we have a good chemistry in Newcastle, so I think if we keep on playing and plugging away, we should, end up, on a good note.
What did you think when you first landed in Newcastle after playing for Portland and then you played in Europe? I mean, that's big-time stuff.
It was different. It's a real small town, but the people were real nice, and it took some time getting adjusted to the league and the life. It's not so much different than, the United States where people talk English and stuff. In Spain, I didn't know what was going on. It's different, but, I'm enjoying myself.
And the league, what expectations did you have and how did they bear out?
Well, I really didn't know what to expect when I came out here. When you get into a league and there's competitive players and players that have been in for many years and stuff, it's difficult to get in and adjust to different type of styles. And so I think I've done good though.
Do you think it's a pretty solid league?
Oh yeah, most definitely. You can tell by there's like 6 or 7 teams with 12 wins and just stacked up right at the top trying to get to the championship and fighting for position. So I think that's a sign that it's a tough league and there's no easy games.
Well, as I mentioned, you're one of the standout players. There have been very few genuine big guys that have actually come out here or even have gone through our ranks here. John Dorge is one that springs to mind, of course. How do you match up with some of these fellas and how have they been trying to guard you?
I think I like playing against the bigger guys, whereas, if I'm going against someone smaller, the team will more likely double team me, and that's difficult on me. But once I get a one-on-one matchup against a bigger player, I enjoy that more because I can work on my skills and, develop as a player also. Who has been the hardest to go one-on-one with? One-on-one. I don't know. I've had too many one-on-one matchups, so I can't really tell you. Yeah. So, I mean, most of the times it'll be just 2-on-1, 2 against me, or, and so it's difficult at times. But, John George is a good player, and, Ray Borner is a good player, and so there's some good big men out there, and I look up to, playing against them. Because we do in this league, I suppose, after playing for Portland, you'd see a lot of guys who we often have power forwards play out here, and they have to play in the pivot most of the time. It must be a big change because, as we mentioned before the interview, that there's a lot of guys your size you've got to match up with over in the NBA. Oh, yeah, in the NBA, there's tons of Reggie Smiths, 6'10", athletic. So in the NBA, it's completely different. Whereas, some nights you might, like in Europe or here, you might have an easier matchup, but not in the NBA. And it's the best league in the world. And And so I'm just looking forward, maybe, you know, with time, getting back into it.
Yeah, can you get back into it? What do you know about the lockout? Must have been a bit disturbing for you and other guys who want to get back and play in the camps.
Yeah, it's difficult. You know, the summer, I was going to go back for the summer league, and I think that was the time for me to show that I was over my injury and I had, you know, made some improvements in my game. But with that, you know, it's making things difficult. But you know, I think with, you know, if they get you know, keep from a lockout and stuff like that, you know, maybe I can get into a veterans camp and, you know, show that I've improved, and, you know, I'm over my injury and I'm looking to get some playing time. And
you've got a lot of options, haven't you, next season? I mean, there's Europe, and of course you can always come back here. I'm sure you'd be welcome.
Yeah, I hope so. I'd be welcome out here, but Europe, I think, would be a big option, and getting back to the NBA is my ultimate goal. So, but, you know, it's one day at a time, and, you know, what happens, happens.
Well, we've got to talk about Newcastle, of course. Wasn't a good night last night. First, tell us what happened there.
Brisbane's a good team, and so they came out ready to play after losing Illawarra, and, you know, they came and they wanted the game, and we had an off night, and that's going to happen sometimes, but I think it's a good wake-up call for us, you know. Maybe, you know, we've won some tough games and stuff like that at home, and we didn't come out ready to play. And so, but I think the next time we step on the court, we're ready to play.
Well, there's a lot to like about this Newcastle team. Finally, tell us what there is that you enjoy about it. There's some good guards in the team with Tony and Butch, and you got some good role players.
Oh yeah, we have a great team. You know, Butch, Tony, MJ, and Marty coming off the bench, and then you have Grant and Maddie that, you know, make things easier for me because, you know, they're you know, good 4 men to play with because they're strong. They play great defense, and, you know, help me in a way of getting some big block shots, and, you know, and then some big rebounds.
Well, thanks for entertaining us this year, mate, and good luck in the playoffs with Newcastle.
No problem.
Reggie Smith there. Now, the Gold Coast Rollers, they could do with a player like Reggie Smith. In fact, they could do with a player. What I mean by that is they still had 3 starters absent when they hosted Perth, who were on the league's longest current winning streak when they hit Carrara.
At Carrara, it was second versus bottom. The Wildcats, minus Ricky Grace, on a 6-game winning streak, up against Gold Coast, second last on the ladder, and minus 3 frontline players. And it was the underdogs that made the most of the running, Harvey and Torrance leading the charge. Missed the second, though, and here's Torrance down the other end. The fadeaway jumper was good from the baseline. We didn't see Double make that move too often. The Rollers raced out to a 12-point quarter-time lead and held sway at the half, up by 8. They go to Torrance. Great movement then. Cats now with 13 seconds to respond before the half. Down by 8, 61-53. Lahoff, Trehair, down to 5 now, and there's a timeout. An upset was on the cards when the Rollers moved out to a 15-point break during the third quarter. Goes to Stewart, bounced past to Crawford, stolen by Harvey. Harvey now looking to take it all the way, makes the layup and scores. And now this is a run. The Cats need to stop. They're down by 15. I'll tell you what, John, if it gets much more, you'll be talking about record deficits in terms of comebacks. But that signalled the start of the end. Perth showed championship qualities to storm back. 10 down with a quarter to play. They took a few short minutes to lay down the gauntlet. By midway through the final term, Perth had hit the front, getting home by 3 in the end to stretch their winning sequence to 7.
Looking good, the Wildcats, the hottest team in the league, in fact. Andrew Vlahoff, one of the hottest players. He hit 17 of 20 free throws, and that's the 3rd consecutive game he has shot 30 points or more. Perth won the final quarter 25-12, overcoming a 10-point three-quarter time deficit. Right now, let's recap the results from the entire weekend in the Mitsubishi Challenge. Some very important ones. Illawarra hosted the Bullets and knocked them off. You can no longer say that a game at the Snake Pit or a win at the Snake Pit for the Hawks is an upset. Adelaide beat North Melbourne. Critical one for them in the fact the first of a weekend double. Melbourne beat Hobart. Very important for them too. Perth at the start of a weekend double as well in Townsville. Moving along to the next night, we've got Brisbane beating Newcastle. Adelaide completed their double in Canberra, and southeast Melbourne knocked off Melbourne in that marvellous local derby, and a good effort too from the Tigers considering they'd played the night before in Hobart. Sydney beat Geelong in a tight one, and the Perth Wildcats beat Gold Coast in a very important game for them. Now, let's have a look at the ladders. Oh boy, between the top 6 teams, there are only 2 victories. Who knows who will finish on top of this ladder? I don't think anybody has a clue, and it's going to be just sensational. We'll check out next week's games in a moment. We've got Adelaide on 10 and 9, bit of a gap between the top 6 and those next 2. But Melbourne on 11 and 10 has a sizable gap to the next team, and that is the Sydney Kings, with Canberra close up, Geelong. I think it's going to be very hard for any of those three teams now to get into the 8. Townsville, Gold Coast and Hobart playing to build some confidence and some W's for next season. WNBL results. And for the weekend, we saw Perth lose to the Bulleen Boomers in a pretty big upset. Then we saw Adelaide beat Canberra. That was fairly expected. We've also got Melbourne Tigers beating the Brisbane Blazers by 9 points to stay on top. We had Perth recovering to beat Dandenong and stay in the top 4. Here's how they look at the end of the Women's League. We have Adelaide on 16 and 2 leading from the Sydney Flames, Melbourne Tigers and the Perth Breakers. They are your final 4. Outside that, Brisbane finished on 10 and 8, and then Canberra, Bulleen, Dandenong, AIS and the Tassie Islanders. Next week in the National Basketball League, an absolute feast of great games. Adelaide continuing their run, Brisbane hoping to stay on top, Adelaide playing to stay in the 8, and who knows what they'll do when they get to the playoffs. Hobart hosting Newcastle. That is always a tough one. Hobart have given teams some very close games down there this season, but the Falcons simply have to win. Melbourne playing North Melbourne, another mighty Melbourne derby. Townsville hosting Canberra. They are not easy games at the Furnace these days, and the Cannons simply have to win that one. Perth and Brisbane, well, arguably the game of the round, but there are many out there. Southeast Melbourne hosting Newcastle, tough weekend double for the Falcons. Likewise for North Melbourne, they go to Geelong. Then we've got the Gold Coast hosting Canberra, who are doing the Sunshine Swing, and Illawarra playing Sydney. There'll be no sunshine in that game. It'll be very, very tough. That's it. We're looking forward to another weekend, of course. Please join me tonight on Sports Tonight. Until then, I'll catch you.
I don't know.